This is the third episode of the character series from the Pages podcast.
Previously on the Pages podcasts.
The whole deal of memorability begins from first impression. As far as recognizability goes, everyone can easily picture the animated face of a horse on a human-like body once the name Bojack is mentioned. Everything from the anthropomorphic design of Bojack to his personality traits and down to his names, Bojack Horseman follows a single consistent design identity, and that is, he's a horse and he's a man. So, how do you introduce the beautiful character that you have developed to your audience for the first time?
You're going to need a very good name. You're going to need character identity and to highlight how the character responds to their environment. Yeah.
And then career, what they do for a living.
That's linked to their identity, then how they also respond to
exactly.
their environment.
Then that's how you stick it.
Wow, fantastic.
In Bojack Horseman, an interviewer introduces Bojack as the star of the 90s comedy sitcom. In this moment, we meet present time Bojack. Eventually, the interviewer says, okay, so what are you doing now in your life since the show's cancellation? And what do we get, Rita? We get a long ad. And that's how we are introduced to Bojack.
Epic. Brilliant. Yes. You just already know that this is going to be very interesting.
In our last episode, we broke down the surface of character design, the Bojack formula for memorability. We talked unique looks, career-driven identities, and the power of the show don't tell introduction. If you missed that unfiltered deep dive, catch the full version on our website. But today, we're going under the skin because here's the fundamental truth. A memorable character isn't always a rounded one. And you're probably wondering, why would I want a rounded character? Well, that's what this whole episode is all about. Welcome to the part 2 of the character design saga, the alchemy of rounded characters. We're returning to the world's most famous hearse to ask a difficult question. How does a 2D anthropomorphic cartoon become a cultural icon for human trauma? It's not just about a unique look anymore. It's about the messy, the ugly, and brilliant elements of complexity. Sit tight. This isn't going to be a pretty walk down memory lane. This is how you build a soul. This is the case study of Bojack Horseman. Okay. Hi, Rita.
Hello.
Yeah, very nice. Okay. So, today's episode will be a bit technical. You know the usual chatting we do in between dishing out storytelling tips?
Yeah.
Well, that will be turned down a notch just because I couldn't find a way to accommodate our discussions while presenting my research findings on today's episode in a way that doesn't reduce the depth of information that I discovered. So instead, I will share with you, Rita, and our audience a story about the main character of our case study, Bojack Horseman. For the sake of pacing, especially for those who haven't seen Bojack Horseman yet, Rita, please feel free to act as a buffer, interrupting me when needed if the story ever gets too complicated or unclear to understand at any point.
I'll do my best.
I'm counting on you.
Yeah.
You are going to be the hero of this episode because I think I will be geeking out a lot. And I'm counting on you to rein me in when I go into the deep end. Here's a warning to our listeners. This episode contains a lot of spoilers on the series. So if you prefer, you can pause this and go binge the entire Bojack Horseman series and then come back to this whenever you're done. In addition, the story is dark. It's saddening, it's problematic, and it might make some people feel very uncomfortable, especially for those who are struggling with issues of emotional trauma, abuse, addiction, and that like. So tread carefully. Listeners' discretion really advised. Yet, it is a story that will help our audience see in practice how rounded characters are created and applied in storytelling. This is the second part of the character design saga of our series. Welcome back, and thanks for making it to the third episode of the character series. I'm your host, Betty, and with me is my beautiful co-host, Rita.
Wagwan.
Wagwan. Right. So here's the story of Bojack Horseman. When you are born Bojack Horseman, you're born a horse. That's not something you're aware of immediately, but eventually you will be. From the moment your eyes are open and you start to make out sounds and voices and you connect those voices to someone or something, you realize something. Here's what you realize, that when you cry, you arouse the anger of a much larger horse who speaks to you very harshly and blames your very existence for her misery. Further in the background, you will see an even bigger horse who yells at that horse for making his own life unhappy. You learn something quickly, that to survive in this world that you've just been born into, you need to be quiet. You need to keep all your discomforts to yourself unless you absolutely must speak up. You learn that it's the best and the fastest way to deter all negative energy away from you. However, no matter what you do, you can't avoid the abuse that is to come. I'm sorry. For now, you first learn which one of those horses is mom and which one is dad. Mom, she's a light brown mare with a white star-shaped marking in the middle of her forehead. That is something you two will inherit. Mom is a thoroughbred like your father, and she has a regal air to herself. This you will later discover is because of her wealthy background. She's a sole heiress to the Sugarman Empire. And there's a whole dark backstory to her family that becomes a reason she terrorizes you and justify her parenting style, cold, like ice cream. For now, she's someone who will teach you how to hate yourself, and dad will amplify those lessons and let you believe you and mom are the greatest obstacles in his life. The reason he can't successfully finish his beautiful work of wonder, that novel. At 6 years old, you watch mom and dad fight about literally everything. And then ultimately, when they're done fighting, guess who's going to take the blame? You. Mom concludes that you aren't worth training. And dad, he still thinks you're a good for nothing crying toddler hogging more attention than you actually need. Every sentence you make to dad is taken as a criticism. When you remind dad that you're no longer a baby, but a child who is forming sentences, he will say, quote, "Oh, and I can't." Everyone is a critic. I can see the headline now. Idiot's son thinks dad's novel is great. Excuse me, when did you talk about his novel, by the way?
Exactly. Oh my god. Ah,
You didn't. You never said anything about dad's novel being great. For all you know, it might as well be trash since mom never fails to remind dad of how useless he is and how he's not able to provide for her the kind of comfort and luxury that she's used to. So, after much argument, dad, he caves and he agrees to get a job at grandpa's company. Grandpa, your mom's dad, who's, wealthy. Life becomes a little bit better. Not for you, obviously, but for mom. It's more materialistic as mom fills the home with so much Victorian luxuries, fancy wallpapers, new couch sets, an ottoman, lampstands, the finest art pieces, etc. And as she's doing that, she's replacing it with the lack of emotional warmth. As the house gets filled with stuff, your head gets filled with words from your parents that remind you of how much space you occupy. By the way, you're small, so you don't really take up a lot of space, but they will tell you that you do. And it makes you apologize for simply existing until you grow up to be a teenager and you don't even bother apologizing anymore because you know why? It just yields nothing but more insults.
wow. Shaggy back to back. This guy has gone through a lot. Ah, man.
No, it's not this guy. It's this person who's listening, who is Bojack.
This person, this person has gone through a lot.
Yeah. You, my friend, who is Bojack, you've gone through a lot. Your childhood is filled with suppressed emotions and you were never permitted to cry. At least not at home and definitely not in front of mom and dad. Mom, she thinks it makes you look weak. And dad, he says it's gay.
That's crazy. God forbid the guy cries. Oh my-
So you learn from mom that the greatest sin of all sin is falling in love or feeling love, since life will only give you pain in exchange. You learn from dad that anger is the best way to show your masculinity and the only proper emotion acceptable for expressing yourself. Well, this is your experience with family, all of whom are horses, as far as you know. There isn't a single horse out there that gives you any positive experience or makes you glad that you're one in the first place, except one, Secretariat, a star racehorse, your personal hero. His TV presence will be the first positive male presence from a horse you would ever encounter. And secretly, he's like the father figure you wished you had. You spend your free time watching his interviews, learning about his life as a star athlete, and immersing yourself in the advice that he gives. In fact, one day at age 9, you write him a letter that was read on live TV during an interview asking for advice on how to be happy. The letter read, quote, "Dear Secretariat, I'm a horse just like you. I like to watch racing, and you're my favorite racer. When I grow up, I want to be just like you, and I think I'm on the right track." Okay, at this time, you need validation. So you start to talk on and on about the joke. Here, you try to throw in a joke about the use of the word track to connect it to race horsing and being a horse. So you go on a tangent and over explain until the joke is lost. So you say, right track, because you're a horse, I'm a track, and you run and you repeat it, and you do that for like 2 pages.
Well, like he's 9 years old though. Like cause him a sound slack. Like he's a kid.
Yeah,
Like
but he needs validation now. He's developed in a world where you need that validation. You
yeah,
need it.
okay, because he's not getting it from his parents, right?
Not just that, because you don't even know what validation feels like. You don't even know what it is. You've never had the experience of it. So when you get it, you crave it more than air you breathe. Anywho, you continue. You say in your question, and I quote you. My question for you is, I'm a good kid, and I like to play, and I like to go to school, but sometimes I get sad. What do you do when you get sad? How do you not be sad? At the end, you signed a letter. Sincerely, Bojack. The response you got from Secretariat was comforting. He got sad a lot when he was a kid too, because he also didn't come from a great home. That's something you immediately relate to, so you connect to him. Then he says that one day when he started running, it just made sense to him. So he just kept running, and he tells you, quote, "Bojack, when you get sad, you run straight ahead. You keep running forward no matter what. There are people in your life who are going to try to hold you back, slow you down, but you don't let them. Do not stop running, and you don't ever look behind you. There is nothing for you behind you. All that exists is what is ahead."
Wow, that's a really cool guy. Solid advice, right?
Is it though? We will see.
Oh,
Now, this sounds like a solid advice, as Rita has just said. It sounds like good advice. I mean, like it makes sense. Just run away from all your problems. Why not? Something you will now secretly bury in your heart, and you will make it your mantra in your personal relationship and in everything. It will be your personal approach to everything: relationship, work, difficult times, life in general. Your approach to everything will always be what? Run away. However, one day, Secretariat, he killed himself by jumping off a bridge. And with his death came the sniping of any good memory connecting you to a horse like yourself. It's quite tragic in the sense that this is a guy that told you to run away from your problems or run away from everything. But even him couldn't outrun fear or death or depression or whatever made him kill himself. As you grow older, you will surround yourself with things and people that do not connect you to who you are and where you come from. You will move to LA as a young adult, a city that is a good 6 hours drive far, far away from your childhood back in San Francisco, to pursue a path that promises wealth, fame, and relevance. Acting. Eventually, you will have your big break into Hollywood celebrity fame. You will try to fill the gaping hole in your heart, a hole that will only grow larger, threatening to consume you whole, with several coping vices like sex, alcohol, public attention, external validation. Yet, nothing works. Instead, these things become addictions that lead you to a downward spiral into existentialism, depression, and the inevitable attempted suicide. But for now, you just keep trying to do a little bit better. Every time you try, you always fuck up. Year after years, after your big success, you're now in your 50s, and time simply makes you more irrelevant. Unless you get your next big role, that's just something you couldn't seem to land. As an alternative, you undertake a big project attempting to write your autobiography. But you lack the necessary skill and, frankly speaking, discipline to get it done. So you begrudgingly allow a ghostwriter write your tell-all memoir, and it becomes a national success and even wins an award. This opens doors and helps you land the lead in a movie about your childhood hero, Secretariat. With this new opportunity comes a new drive to improve yourself and be more positive and give this new role all you've got. You're feeling motivated and things are looking up because you fought hard for this role. However, one time, while shooting an emotional scene, the movie director instructs you to cry on camera. You remember what mom and dad said about crying? Right. The problem is you're a horseman. And as far as you know, horsemen, they don't cry. They don't show weak emotions like that. Besides, you're trying to stay positive. But it's a problem for you because you're an actor, and actors are supposed to be able to express a lot of emotional ranges. This becomes a stumbling block for you and for the rest of the people on the project because you keep stalling. Then, during a break, you get a call from mom, and she's harsh. She's that harsh reminder that you needed about your complicated life. She tells you about your so called memoir and calls you a narcissist for thinking people want to read a book about you. She tells you, and I quote, I read the parts you wrote about me, the things you said that I said to you. You must think I'm a real monster. When you try to explain, she doesn't give you a chance to speak, as she never did when you were a child. She continues her speech, saying, quote, I don't want to fight you, Bojack. I just wanted to tell you, I know. I know you want to be happy, but you won't be. And I'm sorry.
Yo, that's crazy. Like his mother has no sense of emotional, like nothing. That's crazy.
Right. So you, as Bojack Horseman, you are confused. Not because she says that you wouldn't be happy. Oh, that one you know already. But because she apologized. That's something she never did. Or that you were even aware she's capable of. Part of you lights up in the hope that, you're wondering if you're about to get the first sense of connection, communication, or just acknowledgement from mom. But then she adds some more context, and here's what she says to you, word for word. It's not you, she says. Your father and I, well, you come about it, honestly. The ugliness inside you. You were born broken, and that's your birthright. And now you can fill your life with projects and your books and your movies and your little girlfriends, but it won't make you whole. You're a Bojack Horseman, and there is no cure for that.
That's crazy, man. That is. I think I remember this episode. That's crazy. Imagine your mother telling you,
Listen.
yeah, more. Okay.
Something about those words is your final undoing, and you break. When you return back to set, no one needs to urge you much. The stage is set and the camera starts rolling, and the time comes for you to cry. And without much resistance, so do the tears. They just simply roll as the camera rolls too. These are tears mom and dad told you never to let anyone see. Tears mom and dad said will make you weak or gay and take away your masculinity. But you can't help that single tear from dropping because something inside of you has shattered irreparably. Moving forward, you proceed to ruin yourself by self-sabotaging, hurting yourself, hurting those around you, and you develop a sense of entitlement and narcissism. I mean, you already have these already, but now it comes down to the belief that your actions don't matter. Nothing you do matters. So you cause even more hurt to yourself and to others, excusing your actions by using your bad childhood. Eventually, you're going to run out of hurt to cause, and you will cause some people irreparable damage as has been done to you. Maybe sometime in the future, you will check into rehab. And maybe, dear, you will learn hard truths about living with what you've done, the consequence of your actions, and you will become disillusioned. But for now, you have to live with the reality that you must continue to live with yourself and take responsibility for your actions, regardless of how bad your life has been. This is you as Bojack Horseman, the main character of a show about childhood trauma, existentialism, addiction, negative cycles, and so on. This is the summarized version of what it means to be this complex, well-rounded character with lots of depth, character development, and painfully slow transformation. You're not simply a bad guy in this show, but rather you're a guy so sadly broken, you become the poster guy for childhood trauma. And you're a guy who, despite all of the self-wrecking, has a heart that wants to change, that wants to be better, and yes, has the potential for all that transformation. You, my friend, you're a very well-rounded character. What do you think about the story, Rita?
Oh, you're smiling, but like, some people are not meant to have kids. That's all I can say. Like, don't
Right.
do it. Get a dog. Don't do it. That's what I have to say. Yeah.
Right. So, moving forward, we are going to do a deep exploration of creating rounded characters as we have just listened to. And we are going to study the intricate complexities of Bojack and what makes him such a well rounded character in the context of his story. Keep in mind that almost all the main characters in Bojack Horseman are well rounded, honestly speaking. But he's the main character in the story, so that's why we're going with him first. So, shall we delve into it?
Yeah, we're ready. Let's go.
Right. So, Rita, who do you think is the simplest character you can think of in any fiction story, anyone you can remember right now?
Luffy, period.
Luffy,
It's
Luffy.
so simple. Yeah. It's just
Luffy
like,
from One Piece.
yes. So simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. He's like the poster boy for simple character.
Yes.
In literature, characters can be classified as either round or flat, and they can either be dynamic or static. Now, these are words that I often hear thrown around a lot by writers and critics. And sometimes it makes me feel disassociated from the terms because it's not part of my day to day lexicon. Like, I'm not going around using the word round or flat or dynamic or static to describe anyone or even anything. However, these are terms that are commonly used to describe characters and stories. So here's it. Round characters, what are they? They are complex and they are multifaceted. They have depth and they express a range of emotions. And they have very strong, clear motivations. Flat characters, on the other hand, they are typically one dimension. They lack depth. They'll probably be like that one time side character that shows up just to play a specific role and then poof, they're gone. Now, when characters are described as dynamic, it means that they undergo significant change or growth throughout the story. While static characters, well, they remain essentially the same from the beginning to the end. You know how you gave me that example of Luffy, right? As a
Yeah.
simple character. So can you do this task with me? Can you tell me if Luffy is static or dynamic as a character? Do you think he changes
Mm.
much throughout the story or he kind of stays the same?
I think he's more static than dynamic because it's like
Right.
he has a particular way of doing things. It does
Right.
evolve by the time you enter like the 1000 or 1200 episodes, but he, he still has one direction that, okay, this is the
Mm.
direction I'm going towards. Yeah. So he's a static character.
Yeah, he is a static guy. I agree. Like the core of who he is doesn't change throughout the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also kind of hard to make your character a flat character if they're like the main character. You're
Yes.
telling a story about somebody and you don't let your audience see beyond what they look. But then some stories manage to do that. Saitama, One Punch Man.
No comment. No comment
They are so good. In fact, we have more backstories about the side characters than we have of
than
characters.
Saitama himself. I feel like we'll get to that point.
Probably. But for now,
Yeah.
he's a very static, very flat, and very just simple character.
Yeah.
Right. So, in essence, characters can be flat and static. Many times, authors will include this kind of characters in a story for comic relief. Another category that characters can be is they can be flat. Yet dynamic. How can a character be flat? We don't know much about them. We don't know what they're thinking, but yet they're dynamic. Remember that dynamism means that they change throughout the story. And I will give you an example. It's like a villain who lies in the shadow of a story for a long time. Then once they get defeated, they suddenly become good.
Yeah. Yeah, actually.
Can you think of any other character like that? Any example?
I feel like I wanted to mention something in One Piece, But I changed my mind now that One Punch Man has come up. A lot of the characters in One Punch Man are like that.
Really?
Yeah, they come, they want to defeat Saitama, and then they have the whole fight. Saitama smacks them left, right, and then they suddenly start following him. Like they change. They are in his garden. They are making ramen with him. Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Characters can also be rounded while they are staying static. What I mean, like Luffy is rounded
Mm-hmm.
and he is static. I think of main characters that don't really change despite how complex they are and how much depth they are given. An example is Dumbledore from Harry Potter. Are you familiar with the Harry Potter stories?
Yeah, I read the books. Yeah.
Right, you remember Dumbledore. We get Dumbledore's backstory. We get what he's all about, right? But
Yeah.
then Dumbledore doesn't actually change from the beginning of the story to the end. He's literally the same
Yes.
old
He's
sage
the same
guy.
old guy. Yeah.
Yeah, we know he's not perfect and we know he's not always doing all the right things all the time. So
Yeah.
he's complex and there is depth to his character and he has his flaws and everything. But
Yeah.
he doesn't really change throughout the story, you know? All right, finally, the type of characters that we're going to be focusing on are rounded and dynamic, like Bojack. Bojack is actually a very rounded character, but he's also dynamic. It changes through the story. We get to see him in different phases of his life. We got to see him as a child, what he was like, and then what he was like as a teenager, and then when he was still with his friend, when he was in the showbiz at the height of his fame, and then we got to see him change. But it wasn't a change that felt forced. It just felt like we're telling somebody's life story. I believe that this is essentially what most writers aim for because these ones they offer the deepest treatment of character structuring. In these categories, storytellers aren't just crafting a character that's likable, relatable, or realistic. They're also providing relevance to the characteristics of the rounded character to the final output of the story. So here, character and plot delicately intertwine, leaving the viewers a feeling of being deliciously satisfied, like we have personally undergone the character's transformation journey ourselves. So, we will be focusing on creating rounded characters, which is a part of the character design saga of the series. And it is key to note that the main character of our case study, Bojack Horseman, as I've said before, he's rounded and he's dynamic. So to understand what makes Bojack such a rounded character, we must first understand what the term rounded character means. Are we ready?
Betty, sorry, before we continue, I also wanted to let the viewers know that
Mm.
like Naruto, One Piece, Avatar, One Punch Man, like they aren't the only anime that we have watched because we make reference a lot to this
Yes.
particular anime. A lot
Right.
from the episodes that we've had till
Yeah.
now. It's crazy how you watch a lot and you can't like decide upfront, except those ones
Yeah.
that occupy 80% on your brain. So it's not like we need to print things to anybody, just public service announcements. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Of course, we've watched so much, not just anime, even TV shows,
TV
books, web
shows and everything.
comics, mangas. There's
Yes,
just so much, but sometimes it's difficult to pull out of the much, especially when the
exactly.
much don't really have 1,000 episodes. So,
I love
it's,
that point. I love
anyway, thank you for that announcement, Rita. I appreciate that. So, what makes a character rounded? If I were to make a comparison to reality, I would summarize that a rounded character in stories is the fictional equivalent of a genuine person in real life. I think genuine people, they're not necessarily good or moral people. They're not like the epitome of spiritual morality. However, they're individuals who generally present three main attributes. They're authentic, they're self aware, and they're consistent. In fiction, a genuine character will translate to a character that stays true to its clear identity. By definition, though, a well rounded character in storytelling is a complex, multi layered individual with depth, emotions, and believable flaws, making them feel like a real person. They're not one dimensional, they're not static. Instead, they have a defined personality, background, and motivations. They often undergo significant change throughout the story, and well rounded characters, they encapsulate this 3D complexity of what being a human is all about. And that's what makes them relatable and what makes them come off as genuine or real to the audience. The creative team of the animated show Bojack Horseman recognizes the importance of well rounded character And this attention to detail is apparent when they worked diligently to make all the characters in the series as relatable as possible. Even though they're animals, like many of them are anthropomorphic characters. Despite their bizarre physical appearances, these characters resonate with the audience because they grapple with real, genuine human issues that people face in the real world. For a character to be considered a rounded character, they generally need to possess 5 key attributes according to my research. And these are quintessentially human attributes. First, they have to possess complexity, depth, development, transformation, and relatability, which I just put in bracket like realism, right? They have to be realistic as a character. These traits contribute to creating characters that engage viewers and invoke empathy, which is essential for impactful storytelling. If you remember in episode 2 or episode 1, I think we talked about writers manipulating viewers using the tool of empathy. When you talk about character focused stories, this is what we're talking about. A rounded character is simply a more detailed and nuanced version of a flat character. We'll start by exploring each of these 5 main ingredients in cooking up a rounded character that can and most likely will resonate with the audience, using the protagonist of our case study, as always, Bojack Horseman. We will be focusing on character complexity and depth for this episode because time will not allow us to talk about all 5 of them. And the remaining 3 will be addressed as a second part of the rounded character saga. So, if you're ready, let's get into it.
Yeah, that was cool.
Hi, Pages! Jumping in quickly to remind you that this conversation doesn't have to end here. We offer extended versions of every episode exclusive to our subscribers at
www.pagespodcasthq.com.
For just $2, basically the price of quick snack, you can get unlimited access to all of our deep dives. If you're not ready to subscribe but you still want to help us grow, click the link in our description to like, share, or leave a donation. Every bit helps us keep the lights on. Now, let's get back to the show. So now we are going to consider complexity as a tool in crafting rounded characters. Remember that complexity is one of the elements to having a rounded character. In the first appearance of Bojack Horseman, we see a seemingly likable and cheerful horse. He stars in this 90s comedy sitcom called Horsing Around, where he plays the horse, who is the main character in the show, and he adopts 3 little kids and has to navigate life with them as a parent. With that role, he cemented his position as a celebrity and the star of a show that later garnered critical success. That was in 1987. He was happy. He looked so friendly on screen, like the kind of person you want to spend a lot of your time with. That was his glorious day when he played a fictional horse who was the complete opposite of who he truly was. Now we start in the real time in 2019 on the timeline, and there was a major contrast. The horse that we meet in real life, this star, well, he's not a star anymore. He doesn't have kids. I mean, he couldn't even care for them. We see his reaction to when his girlfriend slash agent brought up the topic of kids. And guess what he does? He pushes a random kid on a stroller just to show his paranoia. Quite an exaggeration, but it is comedy. And we, the audience, we can tell that he obviously wouldn't do well with kids in his current state, anyways. He hasn't had any other career breakthrough since the show's cancellation, and now he looks gloomy, unfriendly, like the kind of person you definitely don't want to be around. You don't want to spend your time with somebody like that. He's this horse who is everything he hates. These 2 personalities that we see from the flashback that was very happy to this character in real life, they're the same person, by the way, although he was acting in one, but they contrast each other very, very well. The horse, he hates the reality of himself. So he buries himself in a fictional version that he prefers, the fictional one that we saw on the screen. The only time we see Bojack appreciating the fact that he's a horse is when he sees himself in that same sitcom that he loves and identifies with all the horse jokes made on the show. For example, in the first episode of season 1, Bojack is on his couch. He's rewatching Horsing Around for the 1 millionth time, right? And around this time, he has a housemate or just some little kid that he let stay on his couch. And in the sitcom, one of the kids that he adopted in the show comes down and she's trying to show him what she was going to wear for prom. Bojack in the show asks if that's what she's going to be wearing. And when she tries to defend it, asking if he doesn't think it's cute, he says, "Nay, way, Jose." Now, the current Bojack, who is on the couch, we're watching this series from his glorious days. He's laughing about it and he's feeling very nostalgic in a manner that he tries to explain the joke to Todd. Todd is the roommate that he has. And he thinks Todd doesn't get the joke because Todd isn't laughing with him. Bojack tells him he thinks this joke is very funny. He says, "Nay" means no, but it also is something that horses say. He's very proud of this joke. And it's perhaps one of the few times he doesn't seem to hate being a horse.
Sorry to cut you in. So
Yeah.
there's a joke on TV that is not actually funny.
I mean, it's funny
And
to him.
he's funny. Oh, just because horses make that sound. Nay.
Now you see it's funny.
Now I get it. Now I get the joke. You know, when I was watching it, I thought it was weird too. Like, what's this guy saying? But now that I get
When
it,
you made the sound, you just made me
yeah, I
burst
just
out.
put in line. Bojack, you're way ahead of your time. I guess it's yeah. I guess it now. Wow. Okay. Cool.
Right. Nay. Anyhow, this is the first of many clues that the show gives us into the complexity of Bojack's identity and how he sees himself. Usually, when we watch shows or read stories, we become familiar with a character and we'll be looking for like a clear-cut good or bad label to categorize them. We want to know, is this our good guy or is this a bad guy, right? Especially in children's story, because we are trying to teach them morality. And we think things like, is this person by my own standard good or bad? That's what we think in our head about a character we first meet in fiction and maybe even in real life, right? So the creators of the show, they didn't give us that clear answer. Instead, they present to us this spectrum of complex characters, with the main protagonist being the most complex one. And they offer us enough room at the end of the show to come up with the responses and interpretations. So, how is Bojack a complex character? We will see complexity, first of all, in who he is, how he identifies himself. He knows he's a horse, but he rejects the idea of being a horse. But then we have these few moments where he acknowledges being a horse, like moments where he feels that he can be proud about being a horse, like the joke and how he can relate to the joke, right? This makes Bojack, as a complex character, a living paradox. He's a living paradox. He's a horse. He's also a human. These are two different species merged together into one. He's a horse through and through who will later develop a latent hatred for horses. And you guys, if you think back to the story I told you at the beginning of the episode, you can
Yeah.
understand why, right?
Yeah.
Despite this psychological distance to the character's appearance, like you don't relate to being a horse as a viewer, right? Bojack experiences and just the way he expresses a wide range of human emotions and psychological issues. At some point, you as that viewer, you begin to forget that he's a horse. You see him rather as like this blank character who becomes an embodiment of human trauma and by extension, a projection of your own struggles. This allows
Yeah.
you, as the audience, to empathize better with him. For example, when Bojack's mother says to him as a child stuff like, "You ruined me by being born," I mean, that will definitely do something to any child's brain.
Yeah. It would. No child should hear that.
Yeah. That's something Bojack had to go through growing up and well into his mid-life years. Remember when he was acting, his mom calls him and tells him all that thing? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a character, a thoroughbred, meaning he's not mixed with
Mm.
anything else. He's as horsey as he looks, who presents in front of you, despite being a horse, real human problem. So that's a hint of complexity as expressed in Bojack Horseman. So what's my point? What's the takeaway? When you're creating a character, you can try playing with their physical appearances and behavioral attributes by letting those two things contradict or contrast each other. For example, a very beautiful woman with an ugly personality, or a very shy fox who is actually very clever and sneaky. That's another example. Or perhaps a mermaid who wishes to be a human. You remember Ariel in Disney?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, physically, on the physical aspects or spectrum alone, she's already complex because there's a reason she wants to be human. Because back in the mermaid world, everybody has rules. She's constrained. It feels like there's nothing much for her to do. She wants to go and see beyond. And she's told,
Mm-hmm.
don't go there. Right? So
Yeah.
these are physical attributes, and who she wishes to become are contracting each other. And that makes her complex. You can even think about like a godlike character who doesn't know that he's a god.
He's got like, yeah,
Yeah.
there are so many Percy, it's not Percy Jackson, right?
I didn't really watch it, but yeah, I heard of it. Yeah. They act human or they act like less than they should be acting or whatever. And then they don't know that they are
Mm-hmm.
gods and they act like people that are not gods.
Yeah, I mean the contrast is addictive. It's like I think it does something to our brains. There's just something about that
Mm.
difference that is just very wonderful. We love that shit.
Yeah. So that's like step one, or I would say step one. I mean, you can do it in your 10th step, but that's one way you can introduce complexity to your character.
Yeah.
Another way Bojack is complex is that he's a moral paradox. What do I mean? He's not good, but he's not somebody you can, after watching his entire story, say, oh, he's a bad person. I mean, we know he's definitely flawed. He's definitely problematic. He's definitely so many things you don't want to be exposed to. Or it's probably even the kind of person you wish not to meet when he's on his bad days, right? But this show doesn't present him as evil. That is the epitome of complexity, moral grayness. I feel like that's the formula to anti-villains, the anti-villain trope. The bad guy who does bad things, but you find it hard to look at him as a bad person because you kind of see some level of goodness in him.
You're getting the point. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of see some level of goodness to this person or to this character. And the thing is, people are not simply good or bad, honestly. In reality, as humans, we are complex individuals with both positive and negative traits. Like Bojack, for example, can be caring and he can be insightful, but his insecurities lead to self destructive actions. And this complexity becomes essential for creating a relatable and believable character that the audience perceives. Here are a few monumental examples to Bojack's complex morality. In the third episode of season one, titled Prickly Muffling, we're introduced to a character called Sarah, and she's one of the main characters in the sitcom that Bojack had starred in his glorious days. She's a character undergoing the classic child actor syndrome, and she's in an addiction phase, having a public breakdown episode. Partly due to guilt, Bojack, he tries his best to be there for her by letting her crash in his place temporarily. He tries to offer some sort of support. And he lets her just do literally anything she wants. Unconsciously, he became an enabler to addictions. And by episode 11 of season 3, titled That's Too Much, Man, he will initiate a bender, which eventually leads to a untimely death. In both cases, Bojack assumed that he was trying to be there for her. It's not like he's doing these things consciously or he wanted her to die or to continue to be addicted. But he also has addiction problems. So it's just funny that he's trying to help somebody with addiction.
Yeah. I think I can remember this episode. How is it that somebody who doesn't understand what it means to not be sober help somebody who is not sober?
Right.
That was
Yeah, of course. Like, how can he help? How can he help? He himself, he needs help. His lack of awareness of the danger that he poses to others makes him an unconscious perpetrator. But before you can label him as evil, the show explores how easily anyone can fall into that subconscious trap of hurting those we claim to care about due to our ego or even just self righteousness. When you think, oh, I'm better than other people, I'm more morally
yeah.
upright, you can still
Yeah.
hurt people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can
Wow.
still hurt people while you're trying to do the good thing, you know?
Yeah.
So you suddenly find yourself asking, you know what, this Bojack guy, could he be me? Could he be you, the perpetrator, inviting a friend to a harmful activity because you, as the person, you need a partner in your vice? You will even feel guilt that that friend is accepting this thing that you've invited them to. But then again, you don't recognize what you've done. So eventually you might even start to play the victim. You know, people, when they feel like, oh, I fucked up, but instead of owning up to what they have done, they say, you know what, I'm going to twist the story around and I will be the victim.
And blame the other person for accepting their help.
Yeah, or they will be like, well, I didn't force you. I didn't force you to do
Mhm.
this. You had a choice. But you forget that you play an important role in this person's life. The person looks up to you. The person cares about you. The person loves you. Yeah, they have a choice, but you needed them and they wanted to be there for you. And you took advantage of that. But now you're the victim because you didn't force
Mhm.
them. So when you think about this moral paradox, you can see how it's not something unique to an evil person. Even people that have good intentions can fall into it.
Mhm.
This is another way that the show introduces complexity in Bojack's character by bringing this moral paradox. I'm not saying this is the only way. I'm just saying that this is how they did it in Bojack's case, how they made it complex.
Yeah.
I mean, Bojack doesn't know what's good and he doesn't know what's bad. And he's not even sure what he's doing is wrong or not sometimes, even though he feels guilt. But sometimes he thinks, well, I mean, other people are getting away with it, so maybe it has to be good. Another example is the Penny situation. This one is a very controversial one. Escape from LA is probably the most controversial episode in the entire show. And it is the 11th episode of the second season. There is a character called Penny in the Bojack Horseman the show, who is the daughter of Bojack's longtime friend. Now, keep in mind that this friend we're talking about is someone Bojack was in love with. And probably he was still in love with this character at the time that this particular episode was done. So he goes to visit his friend because he got tired of LA and all of its celebrity blah, and he just wanted to escape, right? So he goes to visit his friend. And there he meets this friend's entire family, including this friend's teenage daughter called Penny. One thing leads to another, the family being so open and welcoming to Bojack, they grew quite comfortable with him being around. So he spent up to 2 months there. Most innocently, he became like a pal to Penny. She was like 17 at the time, if I think. Because it seemed like Bojack understood her best, so they got along. He even used the car to let her practice her driving, and when she crashed it, he struck a deal with her to not let her parents know. One time, he even offered to take her to prom when she somehow ended up without a date for a school dance. And that was because the crush didn't pay her too much attention. So being a teenager, she felt bad about it and she was complaining. And then Bojack was like, you know what? This is a great idea. Let me take you to prom, show him that you can have a date. Well, not necessarily a date, but you can have somebody. You're not alone. That kind of safe. Considering that she was very bummed out about it, she thought, you know what? It's a good idea. The mom, his friend, also thought, good idea. Dad, okay, good idea. Everybody kind of got on board because it felt like a good idea, but like he was trying to do something good. Now, as a viewer, you sort of appreciate the scary side of Bojack. Unfortunately, things take a sour turn when, by the end of the night, he gets caught in bed with Penny in a very compromising position by no other but his own friend who he was in love with, or still in love with. Mm.
That was messy, not gonna lie. I see why it's so controversial.
Yeah, especially when you keep in mind that Bojack was like 50 something and Penny was just 17.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things to discuss about this episode, which is heavily debated as to whether Bojack could be completely blamed or not. He's the adult in the situation and he should have stood his ground to the very end when he refused. And he did. He told her multiple times, no, no, no. But the last time, others pointed out Penny's insistence. She kept making the argument that I'm an adult. In New Mexico, 17 is the legal age of consent. So she's like, I'm an adult. I'm consented to it. I'm not drunk. I know what I'm doing. Please sleep with me. That kind of thing. She begged him multiple times to have sex with him. Bojack, he told her, go to bed. You don't know what you want. But when he was getting back into his cabin, he didn't close his door. And she snuck in. This is where everything starts to get crazy. People continue to say, you know what? Why did he leave his door open though? Why? When he knew that there was like a horny teenage girl outside. Why did he do that? When she gets into the bedroom, we can hear her saying, shh, be quiet, quiet. When he gets caught with her, we don't see him trying to push her away. And later in the series, he admitted that he wasn't sure if they weren't caught, if he would not have done it. And this is why it's very controversial. In both cases, though, both the Sarah Lynn case and the Penny case, Bojack is overcome with guilt and feeling of shame. Yet something much more important was absent in each of them. That is the lack of remorse. And the show shows us that there is a psychological reasoning to Bojack's way of thinking, which brings us to the next point, internal conflicts. Now, internal conflicts is a way writers try to show what the character is thinking. When a character does something that's in line with who they are or out of their character, by kind of getting into the mindset of this character, we can feel like, okay, we know what this person is thinking while they're making a particular decision. Bojack Horseman show has some internal monologue episodes where they do this like super zoomed in to the character's psyche and they let us, the viewer, take a front seat in the vehicle that is the character's mind. I'm not joking. There's literally episodes where you are just getting an internal monologue or just like a monologue of this character. Season 4, episode 6 is an example. That episode is called Stupid Piece of Shit. He wakes up, Bojack, he's angry with himself. And this is just like a day in life of Bojack. He wakes up insulting himself, calling himself a stupid piece of shit. He continues to do all sort of stuff. While doing this, he's also harming those around him. And in one of such episodes, Bojack, he goes on this mental bender with his like deepest, darkest, gnarly, self-depreciating and destructive thoughts about himself.
Yeah, the piece of garbage.
Right.
And the piece of garbage, real piece of shit garbage. And especially when his daughter, he didn't want his daughter to drive his car because he thought that she would get her hands on her. Anyway, that episode was a lot. It was
Right.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this mindset causes him to harm others unintentionally in the process, though. Then he berates himself for always hurting others. And this frequent self degradation becomes, in effect, another cause for further harming others. So he hurts somebody, he feels bad about it, he insults himself, and then causes him to harm others more. And then he insults himself, and then he feels bad about it. And then it's like a vicious cycle. And yeah, it's just hurt people, hurt other people. You know, he believes he can't change. So he accepts his self-destructive ways, using it as an excuse not to come to terms with what he does or to own up to what he's doing or recognize the hurt that he's causing other people in a way that it detaches him from the pain he brings on others. It's really a vicious cycle, as I said before. You as a viewer, though, because you're privy to this internal conflict in his head through the internal monologues the show exposes us to, you're also left conflicted, empathizing with the difficulty of those negative thoughts because it's something that happens. So, like, very often with people, we have negative thoughts in our head and we can, like, oh gosh, I don't even want to think about those times in the month when I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm so a terrible human being.
We all, we girls, traits. But yeah, personally, I can relate to that too.
So you can't help recognizing what a truly stupid piece of shit he is. You admitted to that he's really a stupid piece of shit to others. You can also sort of understand him better. Yet you can't excuse him. This thing right now, this thing where you understand what he's doing, you understand what's happening to him, but yet you still cannot excuse what he's doing. This is the work of internal conflict in complex characters. When you introduce that internal conflict, you show people what people are thinking. You can empathize with them, but you still don't want to excuse it, but you can still empathize with them. I guess it just makes you feel like, okay, you know what? Maybe I would judge this person less. Or even if I would still judge you, but at least from a place of understanding, I kind of understand what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, really cool.
Here's another way that they introduce complexity to Bojack's character. The thing about complexity in character is that it becomes very evident in a character's development. People are judged by what they do, not what they intend or say or think, because you don't know what people are intending. You don't know what they think. Although you do know what people say, but you kind of like affirm what they say with what they actually do. Like somebody says, I love you, but your actions don't show that they love you, that kind of thing. So it's their actions or even inactions, like somebody failing to do something. That's what defines people ultimately. We, the audience, we get to judge the growth of a character as they grapple with the consequences of their actions, and change either for the better or for worse. At the end of the show, Bojack Horseman doesn't simply become a good person. No, rather, he's given multiple opportunities to do what's right. And in some cases, he has to create those opportunities to right the wrong that he has caused. In a classic story, the final act of surrender and sacrifice from a transformative character would be the happily ever after closing, as if that one good theatrical move suddenly cancels out all the other wrongs that they've done and all the harm that they've caused. This person has been bad, but now they do something good and it's like, oh yeah, now they live happily ever after. We get a lot of stories like that. However, that's not how it's approached in Bojack Horseman. In Bojack Horseman, we don't get happily ever after. Not for any of the characters, and especially not for Bojack, but rather we get, hey, look, here's him trying to do better. And here's what he could possibly become if he tries to do better. And here's what he can become if he does worse. But he will always have to face those two choices, to do good or to do bad. However, when Bojack starts to try to make amends, we are shown how that's such a positive move. Yet, there were those people who Bojack had hurt immensely, and he wasn't even aware of the depth of it. He didn't even know how deeply his actions had affected other people. He simply goes on trying to think better, thinking he's now changed. Meanwhile, there are others who have to live with the trauma he left them. But this one's really sad. There was a character he actually strangled on stage, and
Wait, he's strong with the character.
yeah, he was strangling a character on stage because he was under meth and he wasn't aware of his actions. And despite
Wow.
people trying to help him, he just had no control and he just got to this woman and strangled her. And the fact that people didn't even try to intervene immediately was kind of scary because she was actually at the point where she thought she was going to die.
Wow.
And Bojack, he tried to make up for what he did. I mean, obviously, what he did was because he was on the drugs and everything. And we got a story as to how he got into that bender and everything. And you as the audience, you're kind of like, yeah, this is trying. What else can he do? The deed has already been done. But get this, the person he tried to strangle, she develops PTSD where she's now
Mm.
so afraid to be literally close to anybody, especially any guy. She's so afraid of guys touching her and coming very close to her. And she's an actress. And she has to do that every
Wow.
now and then. But she can't do it without reliving that experience of being strangled on stage. This is now her
Wow.
life. This is now her story.
Don't do drugs, guys. Don't do drugs. Yeah, like stay away from drugs, man. Wow.
I think like the show did so wonderfully well showing that even
Mm.
if you try to change, there are just things that happen and you're trying to make it better, but the hurt is just so deep and it's real.
These things happen in real life. No. Not gonna lie, Bojack is a great show. I think everybody should be watching it. This is a good opportunity to watch it. When I watched it the first time, it was just vibes. But now that I'm watching it because of our podcast, there are a lot of things that are settling in my mind and I'm learning a lot, especially with your analysis of the show. Makes me want to rewatch and then absorb the information as it should have been absorbed. Wow.
It is, yeah, it is scary how real this series is, how fucking relatable and real it is when you realize that this is actually a real life experience for many people out there. People are actually living with the traumas that people who quote have changed and become better have left with them. Yeah, they change,
Yeah,
they become better and it's good. And we are happy for their change. But now I have to go take myself to therapy.
exactly.
I have to try not to hurt other people because of what you've done to me. And God
Yeah,
forbid that my mind is so fragile and I cannot accept that I need help. And then I start to perpetrate this same thing that has been done to me. This is the reality of life. And this show does that wonderfully well with Bojack's character.
cool. Yeah.
The creators, they don't leave a final message saying, oh, well, Bojack, he's trying his best. He's now a good person. Or even showing us how everybody has simply forgotten about everything and they've moved on. Rather, we're giving a more realistic take on life that is inconclusive because life is an ongoing process. It's the big idea that as long as we are alive, every working day is an opportunity to do good and make right decisions or to do bad and make wrong choices. Sometimes choices aren't even like that black and white, but every day is another set of active choices to be made. We ultimately get this strong message of consequences of characters' actions, showing us how mistakes impact relationship and personal life. In essence, a complex character feels like a real person with a rich inner life and history that informs their actions. This complexity adds depth and nuance to the story, making the characters more compelling and memorable for the reader or the audience or the viewer. The creators, they don't tell us if Bojack is good or bad because all of the streaks of gray sprinkled in between, we get to see that at every turn, we always get the same sense that maybe Bojack, he's redeemable. Some people think, no, he's not. He's not excusable. Some people think, okay, yeah, he's excusable. Other people think, no, he's not. Because of the depth of the context that the author is giving to us, it allows us to go, you know what? This decision is inconclusive. At this point, we don't know how to judge this person, but to each person, each viewer will come to their own conclusion. Is this a happily ever after, or is this a work in progress?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for listening, Pagers. Next time, we'll be back to the world of Bojack Horseman to unwrap how the show masterfully builds character depth and teaches us about our own lives. Follow us at pagespodcast_HQ and subscribe to your favorite platform so you never miss a bit. Don't forget, the full unedited magic happens at our website. Go check it out. Leave a comment and we'll see you on the next page.
Bye.